لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, we continue in the reading of our book الملخص الفقهي من علوم الإمام الألباني رحمه الله تعالى by the Sheikh Abu Islam Sulaiman Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala. We are still in the book of Salah, Kitab al-Salah, and we have reached Faslun Sadis As-Sadis Ashar, the 16th chapter, in which here we are going to talk about the Salah being out loud or not. As always, the link is in the chat for those who want to join us and participate. The Sheikh, he says, يجهر بالقراءة في صلاة الصبح. يجهر, he is out loud. He recites out loud بالقراءة, with the recitation في صلاة الصبح, in the Fajr Salah. والجمعة, and in Jumu'ah Salah. والإيدين, and the two Eids. والإسtisقاء, as well as the prayer for rain. والكسوف, and the eclipse prayer. والأوليين من صلاة المغرب, and the first two from صلاة المغرب والعشاء, as well as صلاة. ويسر بها في صلاة الظهر, and he's quiet in his recitation. Biha, referring back to al-qira'ah. He's quiet in his recitation in Salat al-Dhuhr wal-Asr وفي الثالثة من صلاة المغرب, and in the third rakat of Salat al-Maghrib, وَالْأُخْرَيَيْنِ مِنْ صلاة الإشاء, and in the last two of Salat al-Isha, وَصَلَاةُ الْوِتْرِ وَصَلَاةُ الْلَيْلِ, and as for Salat al-Witr and the prayer at night, يُسِرُّ بِهَا تَارَةً, sometimes he is quiet in them in his recitation, وَيَجْهَرُ بِهَا تَارَةً, and he recites out loudly in them sometimes. He recites out loudly in them sometimes. Assalamu alaikum, Abba Muhammad.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته أخي الكريم أخي مصطفى.
كيف حالك؟
أبو موبيا. الحمد لله بخير، بارك الله فيكم، وكيف حالكم؟
نحمد الله إليكم، جزاكم الله خيرا.
حفظكم الله.
الله يحييك. طيب. I'll read this last little this last paragraph or last sentence. He says, وَيُسْمِعُ الْآيَةَ فِي السِّرِّيَّةِ تَارَةً. وَيُسْمِعُ, meaning to let to be heard. He lets it to be heard. Al-ayata, an ayat, fi sirriyati taratan. In the silent prayer or the quiet prayer, he lets an ayat be heard sometimes. So maybe sometimes you might hear a part of Al-Fatiha, or sometimes he might let you hear a piece of the surah that he's reading after Al-Fatiha. Sometimes, meaning in the rakat that are silent. Sometimes you might hear something, right? He might let it be heard. So you know necessarily, you might know what he's reciting in Dhuhr. Is he reciting Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad? Is he reciting Sabbih Isma Rabbikal A'la? Is he reciting Ar-Rahman? What type of time do you have to recite what you want to recite, or whatever? Maybe you want to recite the same surah. He would sometimes let it be heard in ayat from the quiet prayers. طيب. This is long. You want to go? You want to read, Abu Muhammad?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, inshallah. Let's get this. والقراءة في الصلاة الفجر أطول من سائر الصلوات الخمس. And the reading in the Salat al-Fajr is longer than the rest of the Salahs, the five daily prayers. ثم الظهر ثم العصر والإشاء. So obviously in order, so Fajr is the longest, then it's Dhuhr, then Asr, and then Isha. وأما المغرب فتارة يقصر وتارة يطيل. So as for Maghrib, then sometimes it is short, shortened, and sometimes it is long.
Sometimes he would shorten, يقصره, sometimes يطيله, sometimes he would go long.
Yeah. ويقرأ في سنة الفجر قل يا أيها الكافرون وقل هو الله أحد. So in the Sunnah of Fajr you read Surah Kafirun or Surah Ikhlas. وتارة قولوا آمنا. What surah is that? قولوا آمنا.
I believe this is
وقل
from Baqarah.
بقرة. Okay. وقل يا أهل الكتاب. Is that the full surah or will they be from the ayah onwards?
What did it say it again?
Would that be the full surah or would that be from that ayah that they
No, that
mentioned?
ayah.
Okay.
That ayah. So, uh, uh yeah. Um, I'm trying to see where this other ayat is. Just the ayat. Kul amanna. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah. As for Kul Ya Ahl Kitab, I don't remember what surah this is right now.
Yeah, no problem.
Let me see. What's the footnote here? Tamam al-Minna. Oh, Surah Ali Imran. Yes. Surah Ali Imran. Now, Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 136 is the first one, and Surah Ali Imran, ayat 64 is the Kul Ya Ahl Kitab.
ويقرأ في الفجر في فجر الجمعة ألف لام ميم. My eyesight's a bit what does that say? تنزيل.
Naam. Surah
Yeah.
Al-Sajdah.
سورة سجدة في الركعة الأولى وفي الثانية في هل أتى على الإنسان. ويقرأ في سنة المغرب ببعدية قل يا أيها الكافرون وفي الثانية قل هو الله أحد. So in the Salah Fajr on the day of Jum'ah, he will read Surah Sajda in the first rak'ah, and in the second rak'ah هل أتى على الإنسان. Is that from that's from Juz Tabaraka. That's
Surah Al-Insan. Naam. Yes.
Surah Al-Insan, yeah. And he will read in the Sunnah of Maghrib. Ba'diyah, what does that mean? Does it mean the first or?
The Ba'diyah means afterwards. The Sunnah of Maghrib, the Sunnah is afterward. The Sunnah of
Oh,
Maghrib, which
yeah,
are performed afterwards.
yeah.
Qabliya, for example, Qabliya is before, Ba'diyah is afterwards.
Would that be? I've heard this somewhere before as well. That there's Sunnah, two Sunnah before the Salat al-Maghrib. Is that what the Sheikh is saying? That there's two Sunnahs before and after?
No, he's just saying as for the two rakat prayed before Maghrib or
Yeah.
between the Adhan and the Iqamah, then this is an emphasized Sunnah. However, it's not narrated as far as we know here what he recited in it. But as for the two Sunnahs after Maghrib, then it's the Sunnah to recite Qul Ya Ayyuhal Kafirun and Qul Huwallahu Ahad.
طيب نعم. ويسن في الصلاة الليل لمن مر بآية برحمة أن يسأل الله من فضله. And it's sunnah in the night prayer if the one passes by the reciting the ayahs of mercy, that he ask Allah for his virtue, from his virtue. وإذا مر بآية عذاب أن يستعيذ منها. And if he passes by an ayah of punishment or adab, and then he seeks refuge from it.
No.
ويقرأ في الوتر في الركعة الأولى بسبح اسم ربك الأعلى، وفي الثانية بقل يا أيها الكافرون، وفي الثالثة بقل هو الله أحد. So in the witr prayer, in the first rak'ah, the Surah Al-Ala is recited, and in the second rak'ah, Surah Kafirun, and in the last rak'ah, Surah Ikhlas. ويضاف إليها سورة الفلق وسورة الناس, and he adds on to it Surah Falaq and Surah Nas. Is that to the
Meaning in
last
the third
rak'ah?
rakat, adding to
Yeah.
Surah Al-Ikhlas. No.
وسنة أن يرتل القرآن ترتيلا, and the sunnah is to recite the Quran eloquently.
With tartil, meaning, and he's going to kind of explain it here, with tartil, right? La haddan wa la ajalatan. Haddan is fast, and ajala is also rushed, right?
Yeah,
You don't recite it rushed and fast and rushed, or rushed and fast. Bal qira'atan mufassiratan, harfan harfan. Rather, a recitation which is mufassara. Tafsir means to expound on something,
okay.
to so meaning you can hear every letter, right? You can hear every
Yeah,
letter.
yeah,
You pronounce every letter from its proper makharij,
point.
not to do
Yeah,
so quickly. وَسُنَّةُ أَنْ يُرَتِّلَ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا وَهَذَا. No, not like that, right?
yeah,
وَالسُنَّةُ أَنْ يُرَتِّلَ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا.
yeah.
No.
ويزين القرآن بصوته, and he beautifies the Quran with his voice. That's recite. ويتغنى به في حدود الأحكام المعروفة عند أهل العلم بتجويد. And he يتغنى, he makes it melodious within the limits of the rulings that are known with the people of knowledge in the field of tajweed.
No.
ولا يتغنى به على الألحان المبتدعة ولا على القوانين الموسيقية. And he doesn't uh, sing with it on the, is it alhan, like rhythm,
No, alhan
or
is a lahan, like uh it's got to do with like mistakes, like
okay,
to pronounce incorrect pronunciations. Al
yeah,
mubtada'a.
that are innovated
Yeah, the
and,
innovated.
and not on the qawaneen, on the principles of music. So basically, and I see, Akhil Karim, that a lot of the people they going into this on, like, when you read research for Quran recitations on YouTube, they call it something. I can't remember now what it's called. It's called something, and then a lot of people are pushing it in the West recently. Maqamat, yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. Maqamat, yeah. They go,
right.
oh, this maqamat,
And
yeah,
all the mashayikh, subhanAllah, they all speak about it and saying this is bid'ah. It's not to be
yeah,
done. And even if, for example, you find a famous qari who talks about this maqam kada wa kada, it doesn't mean it's permissible. Even if it's someone who we promote, for example, Sheikh Muhammad Ayub, rahimahullah, you can find him. I'm not sure if he promoted it, but I know the people promote this is Muhammad Ayub with maqam hijaz, right? Maqam kada,
yeah,
maqam kada. It's not from the sunnah. Even if someone's recitation, for example, you might find a sheikh who's definitely against the maqamat. Excuse me. And then you find someone using him and saying, look, he recited with maqam kada, right? Just because his recitation was in line with a maqam, one of the maqam, it doesn't mean that he used to recite with the maqamat, you
yeah,
know. And so this is a mistake. Definitely, this is a mistake. This is an innovation. This is not how people. It's
yeah,
all wallahi. It's all a way to gain money. Most of those people who promote the
yeah,
maqamat, they're trying to sell a program.
yeah. You know,
They're trying.
Akhil Karim, I heard somewhere, I don't know if it was from one of the videos with the ulama when they talk about this, but they said that actually is it like a rhythm or tone or whatever, and they actually studied in the music schools. Maqam,
Yes.
its origin, yeah, origin is music schools, yeah,
No.
yeah,
No.
long time,
The music in Arabic and poetry in Arabic is much different than say in English. You know,
yeah,
traditionally anyway. Traditionally poetry has, I believe, 8 different types. Like we have a haiku where you have so many syllables in the first line, the second line, the third line. Arabic is like this. In poetry, it has to stick to a certain measure, a number of syllables or whatever per line, and certain number of things. Is not free like poetry in English can be free. You don't have to stick to a certain rhythm. Arabic has a certain rhythm, might not be the word, but a certain pattern that needs to be stuck to. Likewise, music, and these people are learning music and then applying it to the Quran. Subhanallah. May Allah help us. Are you with us?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
طيب.
So إذا فرغ من القراءة سكت سكتة لطيفة بمقدار ما يتراد إليه نفسه.
نفسه.
Uh,
نفسه.
نفسه. Yeah, نفسه. What is tarada mean? Return back?
Yeah, to get back, to turn back, to get back, right? Nafasahu, meaning his breath, to catch his
Okay.
breath.
So when he finished from the recitation, he remained silent for a short uh, time, which is which is equivalent to what his breath getting back to him.
Yeah, for him out to, for him to basically to get his breath. Meaning, if you recite Al-Fatiha, you don't remain silent so that the person behind you can recite Al-Fatiha. You just do it enough to get your breath back, right? When you recite another surah before you go into rukoo, right? There's a short silence, not for anybody else to read or whatever the case, but a short silence just so you can get your breath, right? They're not like us. They didn't recite Kul Hu Allahu Ahad, right? Or something in all the prayers. They recited long prayers. They recited, Surah Al-Isra, Surah Al-Kahf, Surah Al-Maryam, Surah Al-Taha, right? They recited these types of surahs so they get their breath before they go into ruku', because tumanina is a pillar in Islam. I mean, of salat, in the whole salat, everywhere. The tumanina is a pillar. So if you just hurry up and finish and then go into ruku', there's really no tranquility or calmness to your prayer. It's just rushing from one position to the next. So when he finishes recitation, he remains quiet for a short period, the amount what it takes for him to regain or return to him to catch his breath. ثم يرفع.
ثم 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 يرفع يديه ويكبر. Then he raises his hands and he makes takbir. ثم يركع بقدر ما تستقر مفاصله ويأخذ كل عضو ما أخذه. Then he goes into ruku, uh, and he with the time is until all his joints stabilize and every uh, part of his or every limb is place, and this is a pillar.
نعم وهذا ركن نعم. Again, there's not a rush. It's not a rush. ثم يرفع يديه ويكبر ثم يركع بقدر ما تستقر مفاصله ويأخذ كل عضو مأخذه. And then after he makes his takbir, raises his hand and says takbir, says Allahu Akbar, he goes into the bowing position. The amount of time for his bones, his joints to become settled, and for every limb of his body to take its place. Right? Meaning, what is his place? He's going to explain what's his place, right? The hands on the knees, the head in the back level, not bent, not sloped, you know, uh, for everything to take its proper place. This can't be done quickly, not properly, right? Well, hadha ruknun, and this is a pillar of the salat in order to do this and not rush. You see, some people will lie; they go into rukoo. How? You know, well, lie how? وَيَدَوْ يَدَيْهِ
ويدأ يديه على ركبتيه ويمكنهما من ركبتيه. And then he puts his hands upon his knees. What does that mean? يمكنهما من ركبتيه.
يُمَكِّنُ, meaning to place them firmly.
Firmly,
They're
okay.
not just they're not just like resting there. They're not just on there, you know, but he firmly places his hands on his knees. Likewise, this word is going to come up in sajda and so on, right? يُمَكِّنُ جُبْهَتَهُ وَكَفَيْهِ. You need to be firm on the ground, not just barely touching. You need to be firm. Like, this is a position that I'm in. And this is what I'm saying. Like, in Arabic, the words themselves imply this, but the translation that we get when it comes to salat and comes to these positions, it doesn't do it justice. So this tumanina, this yumakkin, you have to firmly place your forehead on the ground, firmly place your hands on your knees. All of these things need to be done. And when you do it like this, and it's not just, then you can't just go up and down. You can't just bounce up and down and rush from position to position. Rather, yumakkinuhuma, meaning his hands. He makes them firm in rukbatehi, upon his knees. Right? And he explains it. Even more details about how the hands are on the knees right now. Well, yufarriju.
ويفرج بين أصابعه كأنه قابض على ركبتيه. And he splits his fingers or separates his fingers as if he is holding on or grasping on to his knees.
Yes. Like you said, he didn't just place his hand on his knee. He grabbed his knee. He grabs his knee.
Yeah. ويجعل أصابعه أسفل على ساقيه. Uh, so he makes his fingers lower than his saqay. Is that his forearm or saq
The saq is his
or
shin. His
shin?
shin.
Okay,
His
okay,
shin. So the fingers, you grabbing your knee, and your fingers are going down towards your shin, right?
okay.
You're placing your fingers on your fingers on your shin.
Yeah. So the lower part of his fingers are towards the shin. Yeah.
Or he places his fingers lower upon his two shins.
Okay. ويباعد م- مرفقيه عن جنوبي
عن جنبيه.
جنوبي جنبيه
عن جنبيه.
عن جنبيه. And he places both on his elbows on his
يباعد.
side. And yeah, he makes
يباعد
his elbows far away from his
sides.
sides. Yeah.
نعم. His elbows are not connected to his sides. They were rather, there's a space between his elbow and his sides.
والرجل والمرأة سواء. And the man
نعم.
and the woman is equal in this.
Even if we just look at this description so far, and there's more to come, he places his two hands on his knees and he places them firmly. He separates between his fingers as if he's grabbing his knees, and he makes his fingers lower upon his shins, and he separates his elbows from his sides. Already, that, if you concentrate on just doing that, you're already not rushing, and there's more to come.
Yeah. ويمد ظهره ويبسطه حتى لو صب عليه الماء لاستقر. And then he extends his back and he makes it flat. يبسطه
Right.
yeah, until if there was water poured over his back, it would basically remain. It would
Yes.
remain. It would
It
remain there.
wouldn't run off. Yes.
Yeah. ولا يخفض رأسه ولا يرفعه, and he doesn't lower his head nor does he raise it.
No.
ولكن آه، ولكن يجعله مساويا لظهره. Rather, he makes the head equal to his back,
Level.
meaning in the same
Yeah.
place.
Level. Musawi here could be level, equal,
Level.
level. Right.
Yeah. ويطمئن في ركوعه, and he has that tranquility in his ruku.
And he hasn't even said anything yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't even said anything yet. He's just getting himself into position. So how are you going to rush? Subhanallah.
Yeah.
وفي ركوعي.
وفي الركوع أنواع من الأذكار, and in the ruku there are different types of أذكار, remembrances. يأتي تارة بهذا وتارة بهذا. Sometimes he came with this dhikr, and sometimes with this another one. ولا يجمع بين الأذكار إلا في صلاة الليل, and he does not combine between the different adhkar except in the night prayer.
No. Or a prayer that's meant to be long, such as Salat al-Khusuf, right? A prayer that he wants to elongate, and it's permissible for him to elongate it, then it's like that.
Is it like this? So is he saying that like you said Subhan Rabbil Azim in the ruku, but then you three times, or if you want to increase on that, you shouldn't do that because that's joining, like
No,
Subbuhu Qudutu Rabbul Malaikati wa
yes,
Ruh,
he's
like
saying you
that.
should not join between different adhkar. That's his position. His
Okay.
position in general is, if you read Sifat al-Salat al-Nabi, the one that's translated in English, the bigger one, then he discusses it in there, but it's kind of unclear in the result, or how he come to it. But alhamdulillah, his nephew is here in Kuwait. His nephew, who spent 25 years with him, his name's Abdullah ibn Adam al-Albani, right? His nephew is here. He's like a spitting image of the sheikh and how he looks and how he talks and everything, alhamdulillah. So we studied Sifat al-Salat al-Nabi with him, and he talked about this. So, for example, there are certain adhkar that say you say this in ruku' 3 times. And there are certain adhkar you say this in salat, right? So if if it's one of the adhkar that says how many times to say it, then the sheikh said, then you only say that adhkar 3 times or 5 times or 2 times, whatever the case is. But if it's from the adhkar that say you say this, then you can repeat that as many times as you want. However, you do not join between the different adhkar and you do not exceed the number. If there is a number that is stated, then we don't exceed that number. And if there is and we don't join between the different adhkar, except in Salatul Layl or a salat which the rukoo is long, like the recitation is long, like I said, like Salatul Khusuf or something like this, then you could join between them. But as for in your normal prayers, you should not join between the different adhkar. This is Sheikh Al-Albani's position, even though many other scholars disagree with him in this. His position is if it says to say this 3 times, say it 3 times. And there was no one who narrated that he joined or combined between different adhkar. There's no one who narrated this, so we can't do it. Like I said, this is the position of the Sheikh. You can read and see what Nawawi and Ibn Hajar and Bin Baz or whoever you want who would deal with these issues. You can see what they say and see who has the strongest evidence. But this is what the Sheikh says.
والتسبيح واجب. And the tasbih or praising of Allah is wajib. So what would tasbih be? Subhan Rabbi al-Azim. You say is
Right.
wajib?
Or whatever it is you're going to say. Right? Here, if even if your tasbih, even if the dhikr that you're going to say doesn't have Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, right? Because here you're in rukoo, then even if it doesn't have that subhanallah in it, then this is going to be considered the tasbih. You're going to have to say something in this position. You're not just going into the position and then coming out of it without saying something.
No. ويسبح 3 تسبيحات لا ينقص عنها. And you say this the tasbih 3 times and you do not go less than that.
No.
وله أن يكررها أكثر من ذلك. And and he can repeat it more than that. So I just want to mention, like with the, I think it's Hanbali, I don't know, but they say that the lowest you can do is 1, 1 and then
Correct.
3. Yeah, the something.
Right. Well, the Sheikh here didn't say you have to say it 3. He just said don't do it. He didn't say it's haram to do it. He said don't do it. Yusabbihu thalathan. Thalatha tasbihat. He does it 3 times. وَلَا يَنْقُصُ عَنْهَا. He shouldn't go less than this, but doesn't mean, just like the Hanbalis, they're not going to say that doing 1 is good or recommended, but it's wajib. For tasbih, a tasbih wajib. You must do the tasbih. What's the correct way of doing things? You have to realize Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, he didn't really have a lot of times, I mean, he will address stuff, but he didn't really look at things from a usuli point of view. He looked at things from a hadithi point of view, right? He didn't look at things like what's the minimum amount I should do. He looked at things as what's the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say to do,
Yeah.
And so that's how he did things. وَلَهُ أَنْ يُكَرِّرُهَا أَكْثَرَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. And he can repeat it more than that. Like I said, as long as the hadith says it in general, then you can repeat it more than that. If it says a certain number of times and the sheikh says you can only say it that number of times.
ويجعل ركوعه وقيامه بعد ركوعه وسجوده وجلسته بين سجدتين قريب من السواء. So he makes the ruku and he's standing, and after the ruku his prostration, and he's sitting between the 2 prostrations close to each other, meaning in length. Would that be?
Yes. Similar to each other in length.
Yeah. ويحرم أن يقرأ القرآن في الركوع ولا في السجود, and is haram to read Quran in your ruku or in your sujood.
He says here it's prohibited to. He
Yeah.
says here it's prohibited to read it in rukuu, but not in sujood. However,
Yeah, ولا في السجود, sorry, yeah. I know in sujood. So yeah,
uh,
I had another like some of the issues. Obviously, it might be the Hanbali fiqh that I've studied. They say it's forbidden to recite Quran in sujood, but then it comes to my mind that there are many adhkar that are mentioned in the Quran that you might use. So yeah, that was the question.
first off, on page 20, on page 67,
Yeah.
a few pages from now, it says وَيَحْرُمُ قِرَاءَةُ الْقُرْآنِ فِي السُّجُودِ, and it's prohibited to read the Quran in sujood. So here it's a contradiction, right? He said وَلَا فِي سُجُود, Allahu alam, it should be wafi sujud, and Allah knows best, right? However, for example, Rabbana Rabbana ighfir lana li ikhwanina alladhina sabaquna bil iman. This is an ayat from the Quran, but you're not going to say waqalu Rabbana. You're not going to say waqalu, right? This is the ayat. The ayat is waqalu, and they say Rabbana ighfir lana. But if you just say the dua, no problem. The problem is if you recite the whole thing. For example, qalu rabbana atina fid dunya hasana. No, not waqala, just rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan. Say the dua, but don't say the ayah.
Like you said, Rabbi habli min ladunka dhurriyyah tayyiba. Yeah, you could do that
No,
like that. Yeah.
right. But don't, but the parts before it and after it, for example, don't
Okay.
say those as well.
Okay.
Right? What's the ayat in Surah Al-Furqan? When you want to say things you can't say, you say it all the time.
ربنا
Rabbana,
وذريتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما, something like that.
nah, exactly. But you're not going to say waqalu.
وقالوا ربنا.
You're just going to say Rabbana. So then this is not recitation of the Quran. If you say Subhanallah, Subhanallah is in the Quran, right? But Subhanallah is not what's meant here. What's meant is if you add the other things along with it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And Allah knows best.
Inshallah. If some ayat, complete ayat was only dua, you can use this. Like in Suratul Suhara, there's one dua of Prophet Ibrahim was saying, Rabbi habli hukma waj'alni minas salihin. It's a complete ayah. And all is dua. You can use it in your sujood.
If it's a
like
dua, you can use it. You're not, and
Okay.
you're not going to recite it with tartil. You don't have to mud al-amdad. You don't have to prolong the mud or the mud, not the mud, but the mud, and you don't have to have the ikhfa and the idhar and the ghunna and all of these types of things. But if it's an ayat, you can recite it, and Allah knows best.
Okay, Allah barik. Jazakallah khair.
ومن نسي الركوع فعليه أن يأتي بركعة. And whoever forgets to make a ruku, then it's upon him to come with a rak'ah. So would that
No.
be after the salah, like he do the taslim and then makes the rak'ah, or would it be that he makes
Well-
if he's done 4, then he makes another one, 5?
Well, if he forgot ruku' and he didn't make ruku', then if whenever he realizes that, he would go back, or he would make that part up, that salat up. You know, like that ruku' is missing, so therefore you have to make up that whole rak'ah, because everything after it is no good. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. So everything after that, meaning from that rak'ah, would not be counted. So a person he started the salat and he forgot ruku'. He went straight into sajda. Then he remembered this. He's going to have to make up that rak'ah because he has to go and bring ruku' all over again, right? If he does this before the taslim, then he makes it up before the taslim. If he does it after the taslim, and someone says, hey, you forgot to make rukoo, you went straight into sajda, then he makes that rakat up. Clear?
Yeah. Would this be because it's a rukun? Would you do the sujood sahu for the first?
Yes.
Like, for example, if you did it after the taslim, the taslim in the first taslim, would you make the sujood sahu, or would it be that when you made it up in that part, will you make the sujood sahu?
Well, you would make the sujood sahu in the part you made up because you didn't necessarily even know you made it. You messed up yet. You
Yeah,
see what I'm saying?
yeah. Exactly.
So therefore, you would make the sujood sahu when you finish your prayer. Now, as for should it be before the taslim or after the taslim, then this is different. Sheikh Al-Albani, as well as many other scholars, they say, such as the Nawawi and others, say in any particular time, the sujood sahu can be made before the taslim or after for whatever the mistake is, whether it be forgetfulness or adding to something. You can do it before or after. Of course, there is a sunnah. If you forget, you do it like this. If you add, you do it like this. But if you do it opposite of that, if you don't do it in its so-called sunnah position, then any of the sujood sahu is acceptable. Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, he says there's not enough, this didn't happen enough times for us to make a rule based upon this, right? For us to make a rule based upon when you should do it before and after. And in Nawawi and others, and some Hanbalis as well, they say that to do it before the taslim is better. Because if you do it after the taslim, a lot of times people get up and they run and they do their prayer. Or people who are masbuq, they come late to the prayer, then they don't know what to do because here you are, you made taslim, so they stood up for their next rakat, that they missed. And then here you are going back down into sajda. So what do they do when they're supposed to follow the imam? So some of them say it's better to just do it before the taslim.
Yeah.
And some say you could do it this way or that way. The sunnah is to do it this way and that way, but it can be done either way. There's a lot of different madhahib for sujood sahu. Almost every scholar has his own madhab.
Yeah. Sujood sahu is very confusing for me.
Huh?
No, I say sujood sahu, I cannot just grasp it. I try to read a
Inshallah.
lot of time, but I cannot.
Inshallah, maybe after the summer, in the summer or something, maybe we could go over it. Sheikh Uthaymeen has a book about Sajdat al-Sahu.
Yeah.
Muhammad Saeed Raslan, he explained it. So maybe we could read that book, inshallah.
Inshallah.
In the future. Inshallah.
What is the name, yourself? Just for Sheikh Raslan and Sheikh Uthaymeen. Do you know the names?
If you just type in Sujood al-Sahu lil Uthaymeen, you'll find it. And then if you type in Sharh Sujood al-Sahu li Raslan or something, you'll find it, inshallah. I don't know the exact name. Okay. ويباح للإمام إطالة الركوع. This is an important point.
ويباح للإمام إطالة الركوع إذا أحس برجل يريد الصلاة معه فله أن ينتظر راكعا ليدرك فضيلة الركعة مع الجماعة. So, and it's permissible for the imam to lengthen the ruku if he feels that a person or a man wants to you want to pray with him. So then it is upon the imam to wait in ruku so that the person he can attain the virtue of the rak'ah with the jama'ah.
Naam. Ahassa meaning to sense. You said feel, and that's fine, but I'm just giving a better word for it. إِذَا حَسَّ بِرَجُلٍ. He senses a person came in, right? And he heard him come in. He senses him coming in the back door. He hears the door open or something like this, right? He hears the footsteps. He senses it, and he senses that he wants to come join the prayer with them. Then he waits for him in rukoo so that he can catch that rakat along with the jama'ah. Where does he get this from? Is there a hadith for this? Does anyone know where the Prophet ﷺ prolonged his salat
No. No.
or prolonged his rukoo for this purpose?
No.
Let's read the next line, inshallah. وَيُسَنُّ لِلْإِمَامِ
ويسن للإمام التجوز في الصلاة لعارض. Is sunnah for the imam التجوز, is that means to go التجوز في الصلاة لعارض. I don't understand that.
Tajawuz means to skip something or to go over, to pass over something. Here, meaning to kind of to shorten it or to go like wajiz, something brief, to be wajiz, to be short, concise, brief. Fi salati li aradin. If something were to occur or come up, arid is something that happens. So it's sunnah for the imam to shorten the prayer due to some circumstance. Do we know a hadith for this?
Yeah. Maybe like no.
Huh?
No, we don't know.
Yeah, the Prophet ﷺ said, I want to come to my prayer and I want to lengthen it. And then I hear a baby crying. So I shorten my prayer because I know how the mother feels about the baby crying.
Oh.
We know this hadith, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Likewise, the Sheikh, he uses this hadith for the first part, for the imam to lengthen the rukuu if he senses a person coming. Where does he get that from? Because the Prophet ﷺ in his salah is considering the people behind him. He's considering those who are praying with him. So if there's something that happens, a loud noise outside or a baby's crying or something that's going to distract the people, then he shortens the prayer so that they're not distracted in their salah. Likewise, this is looking out for them. So likewise, if I hear someone coming and they want to catch that rakat so that they don't have to make up. No one. Well, like no matter how hard you try and no matter how much you love salat, if you miss a rakat and you have to make it up and everyone else is making their dhikr, you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, man, I wish I would have caught the rukuu.
Yeah.
Just if I'd have, about the woman and the baby crying, the same way to use if you sense that the person is coming, that you should wait for them, because this is likewise looking out for those who are praying with you.
Subhanallah. Okay. It makes sense.
وَيُبَاحُ لِلْمَأْمُومِ
ويباه للمأموم أن يرقع دون الصف لكي يدرك الركعة مع الإمام. And it's permissible for the when he's being led in prayer to make rukuu in order than the saf, so that he can reach the rak'ah with the imam.
No. So he says permissible for the person who's coming to pray that if he sees the imam in rukuu, that he can make rukuu from behind the rows in order to catch the rakat with the imam. And this is different than the opinion of Sheikh bin Baz and Sheikh Uthaymeen and others, because they quote the hadith of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, even though there are other Sahaba who did it as well. But they quote the hadith of Abu Bakr where he did this, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him about it, and he said, زادك الله حرصا ولا تعود. May Allah increase you, but don't repeat it. Right? Don't repeat it. The Sheikh Al-Albani says the problem is that they quote this hadith in a summarized form. The Prophet ﷺ said, may Allah increase you in your eagerness to do good, but don't do it again. Whatever you catch with the Imam, make it up, and whatever you miss with, or whatever you catch with the Imam, pray it, and whatever you miss, make it up. Meaning that he rushed and he raced to the Salah. That when he did it, he rushed. He like ran to the rak'ah in rukoo. And Sheikh Al-Albani says this is what he was saying. Don't repeat it, meaning don't repeat the racing. Don't repeat the racing. But as for making the rukoo behind the saf, then this is reported from at least, I believe, 5 different Sahaba.
Okay.
Right?
Ustaz, rukoo behind the saf, what's the meaning? I don't get it really.
Meaning if you walk in the masjid,
yes,
and you're heading towards the rows and the Imam goes into rukoo, you make rukoo and walk into the row in rukoo.
Oh, is that
You walk in rukoo, and by this you'll catch the rak'ah.
Okay, I see. So
the rows are here. This is the Imam. The rows are here, and you come in. He makes rukoo. You make rukoo, and you walk in rukoo until you meet the row.
Okay.
Right, and in this way you'll catch the rukoo of the Imam.
Oh.
Now what they're saying is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, not Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, even though there's a hadith Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu did it as well. But Abu Bakr, this is the hadith where the Prophet said, may Allah increase you in eagerness, but don't do it again. He did it and he rushed, he raced, like he ran, he jogged in rukoo to the row. This is what the Prophet said, don't do again. Don't rush to salat. Whatever you make with the Imam, then make it, and whatever you miss, then make it up. So this la ta'ud doesn't mean don't make rukoo behind the saf, according to Sheikh Al-Albani. It means don't rush.
Okay.
وَمَنْ جَاءَ وَالْإِمَامُ رَاكِعٌ, and whoever comes and the Imam, whilst the Imam is in rukoo, يكبر تكبيرتين تكبيرة الإحرام وتكبيرة الانتقال. Then he makes 2 takbirs, the takbir of ihram in the beginning of the prayer, and takbir of movement, or from moving from one position to another. So that is from the standing to go into rukoo.
No. So you make 2 takbirs. Right? Now, he didn't say it was wajib here or anything like this. Bin Baz, rahimahullah, he says it's sufficient that you make 1 takbir. But Sheikh Al-Albani, he says that you should make 2 takbirs, the takbir al-ihram and the takbir al-intiqa, the takbir of moving from one position to the next.
Okay. If I'm going to seek Ibn Baz's opinion, if you do 1 takbir, you intend it to be takbir al-ihram?
We have to do takbir al-ihram for sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Right? You have to do takbir al-ihram. No.
Okay. No.
Okay, let's do this one. Maybe we should have time, unless there's a lot of comments or something. We should have time to do this.
Yeah. ثم يرفع صلبه من الركوع. Then he raises his spine from or back from the ركوع.
No.
وهذا ركن, and this is a pillar. ويقول في أثناء الاعتدال سمي الله لمن حمده. So he says during this with اعتدال, how do you say, like with the relax, how do you say اعتدال here? Sorry.
بيقول في إثناء الاعتدال. And اعتدال is to stand back up and to be. So in that process of doing so, in the process of standing up straight.
Yeah, he says سمي الله لمن حمده فيجمع بين تسميع و الحمد لله فيجمع بين التصميع tahmid. So he gathers between tasmi', sami Allahu liman hamida, and tahmid. Okay, sami
رب
Allah.
ربنا ولك الحمد. نعم.
Okay, Rabbana.
ويرفع يديه عند الرفع من الركوع. And he raises his
Yeah,
hands when rising from ruku'.
yeah.
ولا صلاة.
ولا صلاة لمن لا يقيم صلبه في الركوع. And there's no salah for the one who does not, make his spine upright in ruku.
Yeah, he does not establish. He does not,
Oh, so
you
yeah,
know, make
establish that.
his back straight in the
Yeah,
ruku'. So
yeah,
the ruku' is not simple. The salat is not just, well, alhamdulillah, we've been doing it for many, many years. So it becomes something that we do, as a motion. But the salat takes, for it to be correct, takes a lot of concentration. ويقول أذكار القيام.
yeah. One second. ويقول أذكار القيام بعد الركوع. And he mentions the أذكار for standing after the ركوع. ولا يجمع بينها إلا إن أراد الإطالة كصلاة الليل. And he doesn't gather between them except if he intends to lengthen the salah like in the night prayer.
No. And here he said
ويجهر
كصلاة الليل. Kasalat,
yeah,
like in the night prayer, meaning night prayer, salat al-khusuf, whatever is elongated. ويجهر.
ويجهر ويجهر الإمام بتصميء كالتكبير. And he makes the tasmi' سمع الله لمن حمده loud like his takbir, or clear
No.
like his takbir. والإطمئنان بعد القيام من ركوع ركن. And tranquility after standing from ruku is a pillar.
No. This itma'an, wallahi, tumanina is important. Very important. Like almost you need to breathe. I think a lot of times we don't even breathe. We just Allahu Akbar, Sami Allahu, Allahu Akbar, Subhana Rabbil Azim, Subhana Rabbil Azim, Subhana Rabbil Azim, Sami Allahu Liman Hamidah. We're like out of breath. Just take your time, breathe, relax. For every position, relax.
No.
This is important, and your prayer will be different if you do so. والمأموم.
والمأموم يقول سمع الله لمن حمده عند القيام من ركوع وإذا 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 استتم قائما قال ربنا ولك الحمد أو ما ثبت من ذكر. So the one who's being led in prayer, he says Sami Allahu liman hamida when he's standing from ruku, and when he completes his standing, he says Rabbana wa lakal hamd, or what has been established from the dhikr.
Now, so Sheikh Al-Albani says the follower as well says Sami Allahu liman hamida. Most madhab say Sami Allahu liman hamida is for the imam. Rabbana wa lakal hamd is for the imam and the follower. But Sheikh says no, both the follower and the imam say Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Or what
Wala-
is established from the dhikr. Naam. Wala yushra'u.
This is where some of the people disagree with me as well. ولا يشرع وضع اليدين إحداهما على الأخرى في هذا القيام لعدم وروده. And it's not legislated to put the one of the hands on the other.
Now, not one of them, both of them.
Okay, so yeah, put both the hands one on the other in the standing for the absence of its mention or the proof.
No. Sheikh saying you don't put your hands back on your chest after ruku.
Yeah.
Right? You don't put your hands back on your chest after ruku. And Allah knows best. It's the Sheikh, he says it. And, we all know that Bin Baz and others disagree. And the Sheikh says there's no, it's all due to those who say those who say to do it, they say because the Prophet ﷺ said until all the person's bones go back in their position. What is the position of a person in his standing in the salat? In the standing in salat, you have your right hand over your left on your chest, right? So they say until all the bones go back to their natural position, meaning in salat. So therefore, you do this. Sheikh Al-Albani says no. How the fingers were described, where to raise the hands, when to say the takbir, all of these things were described in such detail. Yet the fact that to place the hands back on the chest was not mentioned in detail. Rather, you're going to go by some generic use of the Arabic language or the word or how it's meant to try to do this. Then he doesn't accept that, right?
Okay.
And these types of matters people shouldn't fight over. Right? I heard you say in the beginning this is where people differ with me about it, right?
Yeah.
People shouldn't fight over these things. Allah knows best. You do whatever one you do based on a minor amount of ijtihad that you've done by reading both Bin Baz and Uthaymeen's and Al-Albani's books on Salah or Fawzan or whoever it is. But if you take Bin Baz's position, I can guarantee you that if you sat with Al-Albani, you wouldn't be placing your hands on your chest after the Salah. And if you took Bin Al-Albani's position that you don't place your hands on your chest after Salah, and you sat with Bin Baz, I guarantee you that you'd be placing your hands on your chest after Salah at the end of that sitting, because they could convince you of it. They know what they're talking about. They would convince you of it. However, you have made this decision. This is not a decision that they even themselves thought about. While Al-Albani said it's a bid'ah, he used to pray behind Bin Baz, and he used to follow the imam, and he would go down on his knees first instead of his hands when he prayed behind the imam, who went down on his knees first instead of his hands.
Okay.
He would follow the imam in what he did. And this is something different than you find from Sheikh Al-Albani than most other ai is that he uses this hadith that the imam is meant to be followed. He uses it very strictly. Whatever you see the imam do, you do. Even if it's different than what you do yourself or what you believe is correct in the prayer. So if you believe going down on the hands first is the sunnah, but he goes down on his knees first, you go down on your knees first following the imam.
Okay.
If he makes taslim after 2 rakat, what are you going to do? Say subhanallah. And then you're going to say you shorten the prayer. The Sahaba followed him in that, right? They follow him. They say, some people say if the imam stands up for a 5th rakat, what do you do? Some people say you don't follow him. You just say subhanallah and you wait to him to come back into the tashahhud and you make taslim with him. Sheikh Al-Albani says, no, you stand up in that rakat with him. You follow the imam. You say subhanallah, you try to get his attention, but if he does something, you follow him in it. And so the sheikh, these are not something going down on the hands or knees first, where to place your hands after rukoo. These are not things that the Muslims should be fighting with one another about. There's a difference of opinion amongst the early scholars. If there's a difference of opinion amongst them, we're never going to get rid of that difference of opinion. We're never going to be unified on something that they weren't unified upon. It's impossible. We're never going to all agree to something. Maybe I for myself agree to a position and come to a strong point and say, no, it's bid'ah. No, this is right. This is wrong. Maybe I can study the issue and I can make that decision for me and I can tell it to you. But that doesn't mean that we're going to agree upon it, because the early Salaf didn't agree upon it. And if the early Salaf didn't agree upon it, there's no way that we can ever come to an agreement upon it.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't fight one another about this.
Yeah.
We can educate each other. We can try to convince one another with strong evidences and arguments, but it should never, ever, ever be an argument between us. Allah yubarak fikum. Inshallah, I will continue tomorrow going into the sujood bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
inshallah.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.